everyone. My name is Catherine Skidova, and I am the Russia Country Coordinator for Advising. And today I'm going to speak with you about how to choose a U.S. institution. So as you may or may not know, in America there are thousands of accredited universities and colleges that can accept international students. Roughly 4,000 at the undergraduate level and roughly 2,000, a little bit under 2,000 at the graduate level. So choosing a university where you will study in the States will probably be one of the toughest challenges, toughest decisions that you will make in your future career and education plans. So today we're going to talk about how you can choose a university from the thousands of options that you have. First, I will talk about a few things that make the process a little more complicated, and then give you some tips about what make the process a little easier for you. So the first thing to keep in mind is that there's no central government authority in the United States. So we don't have one body in the United States that controls all forms of higher education, and each university, therefore, is able to make its own decisions about types of courses, degrees they offer, the types of students, and etc. And also because there is no one body, there's also not a countrywide ranking system for universities that will rank these universities, of thousands of them, from top to bottom, from best to worst. And everything will depend on really you, essentially. Also, there's no standard admissions exam for the whole country. Each university will decide which exams you take, what scores they prefer that you have, and also what kind of background you have to get into their schools. So because the education system is so non-centralized, it makes this choice of where to go much harder for international students, because each school will be different and make their own decisions. So when students ask about where they should go to school, the answer is always going to be, it depends, and really it's going to depend on you. So today I'm going to be talking about how to choose an institution, and I'm going to be using information that you can also find and access on the EducationUSA's website. It's called the 5 Steps, and today's topic of choosing an institution falls under the first step of researching your options. To keep things simplified, today I will focus on the undergraduate process for choosing an institution, but I can also answer questions about the graduate selection process, and also add some tips about the graduate programs as well. So to begin, to select a university in the States, the first thing that you really need to do is examine your background, to determine what you want to do, what's important for you for your future career and education. Then from there you will have to narrow down your choices and then prepare for the exams in order to be admitted to these universities. So now I'm going to focus on defining your priorities. So determining what's most important to you. There are lots of different factors that are going to come into play with this, and each of them are going to depend on you as an individual student. The type of school that you would like to attend, what special needs you might have, your ability to pay for school, or your dependence on financial aid, where you want to live, what you want to major in. So these are all factors that you must take into consideration when choosing an institution. So when choosing an institution, you also need to decide what type of degree that you're going to get. So for the undergraduate degrees, are you looking for an associate's degree, which is 2 years? Or are you looking for a bachelor's degree, which is 4 years? Depending on what type of institution you will start at, it will depend on what kind of programs they might offer for you, and what your ability is to get admitted to the school, pay for the school, and also your future education goals. So the associate's degree, like I mentioned, is 2 years, and these will be at community colleges or junior colleges. And for most international students, the option for the community college associate degree is for them to continue on to a bachelor's degree after they finish the first 2 years, or you can finish your education after the first 2 years. For bachelor's degrees, these are going to be 4 years to complete, and you can complete them at universities, colleges, or any kind of specialized institution that might be specific to your major. These are programs are going to be very flexible, and they're going to be a wide variety of courses, course types, instruction type, and again, you'll have to determine what is going to work best for you when choosing the school. Another thing to take into consideration when choosing an institution is going to be the cost of studying and living on the campus to pursue your degree. In America, nothing is free. Education especially is not free, but in a second I'll talk about ways to help pay for education. But first off, you need to consider the cost of the education. This is going to be tuition and fees, so the amount that's going to cost for you to take classes and any additional fees to live in dorms or participate in activities, things like that. And then living costs are going to include your room and board, so living on campuses and additional types of expenses. So when looking at institutions and deciding, this might be a factor for some students. If you have the ability to pay for education, this might not be as important of a deciding factor for you. But if you have financial needs and need to have some sort of scholarships to pay for your education, then this will be something important for you to keep into mind. So I mentioned about costs. So another thing, so if you cannot pay for your education in the States and you will be dependent on some type of financial support in order to pursue education in the States, then you also need to look at the type of financial aid that is available at that institution or from external sources to help pay for your education. In the United States, there is several forms of financial aid. The first kind for international students is going to be merit-based. This means that you could possibly receive scholarships based on your academic past, your experiences, your test scores, if you have a special talent, say for music, or if you're going to play sports on the campus in America, things like that. So these are going to be based on your abilities, either physical or some kind of talent or academic. There also are some need-based scholarships, and these will be based on your family's income, so you'll need to send in additional documents about your family's income to receive these. They're not as common for international students. Sometimes they're country specific, but for most part you'll be looking at merit-based scholarships. Now again, like I mentioned, for cost and financial aid, not all schools are able to provide financial aid to international students. So if you are dependent on this as a source of a way of paying for your education, then you'll need to make sure the university has the opportunity to provide this kind of financial aid for you. Also, there are options to work on campus up to 20 hours a week, but this will generally be very small amount of money and not necessarily enough to cover living expenses or tuition. Other ways that you can look to pay for your education in the United States would be through some kind of government scholarship that maybe your government offers to students in your country to study abroad. Or maybe the U.S. universities have a region-specific scholarship for students and are looking for a certain kind of student from a certain region and maybe offer extra money for those kinds of students. There are also different kinds of U.S. scholarships. So many of you may have heard of the Fulbright Commission, and you can also check, this is going for graduate studies though, but then you can also check the U.S. Embassy to see what other kind of opportunities they might have in your country. Also, this is not as common, but they do exist, so private sponsors, so different types of universities, organizations that might have scholarships for students and are willing to provide this money for students to cover their education costs in the States. Keep in mind, though, that the U.S. institution, the university in the States that will be admitting you, that's going to be your primary source for funding for your education. So if you need the funds, it's important that you definitely know this information and consider that in your choice for school, university. So after you've kind of considered the financial questions, then there are different types of institutions in the United States that you can choose from, both public and private institutions. So the public institutions are going to be state-run schools. So the state of Ohio, the state of Illinois, they're going to have public schools. And then there are private institutions that are around the country as well. These schools, for the public schools, the tuition typically is a little bit lower than the private institutions, but traditionally do not have as much financial aid for international students. And the private universities will typically be more expensive in terms of cost, overall cost, but might be able to provide more financial aid for international students. So again, keep this in mind when you're selecting your school. Again, it's going to depend on your individual circumstance and the individual schools you pick about the financial aid they have. Just keep that in mind. There are also specific focus types of programs. So if you're interested in art and design, then maybe you would want to go to a university or school that specializes in art and design. Or if you're looking to pursue a music career, maybe it's best that you look at universities that have conservatories that have a very strong focus on music and things like that. Okay, another things to keep in mind when selecting an institution in the States, selectivity and size. So selectivity is going to be about the type of students they select, the percentage of students they select out of the applicant pool. And this is going to be based on different factors that the school will identify for themselves, but typically it's going to relate to standardized test scores and your past academic performance. So this is another really good reason why you should really examine your past academic experiences, because it will help you determine which schools will be a good fit for you for applications. So if you have slightly lower test scores or not as good grades, then trying to apply to a university that is highly selective might not be the best choice for you in terms of being admitted and financial aid. Maybe it's best to look for universities that have a student pool that's more close to your academic background and test scores. Also, for size for universities. Just like universities range in how they select students, the types of majors they offer, the sizes of the school is also going to greatly vary from several thousand students to hundreds of thousands of students. And so just is going to depend on this type of learning environment you're most comfortable in. Are you interested in a class that has many students in it, or are you interested more in smaller class sizes where you have more one-on-one engagement with your professors? Also, you might be interested in knowing how many international students are on campus. Do you want to be one of the only few international students on the campus in the United States, or are you interested in having a community of other international students to associate with on the U.S. campus? And just a few more factors to take into consideration. Location. As you know, the United States is a very large country, and each state differs from the next. The regions of the country differ also greatly in terms of climate, food types, culture, accents, and things like that. So it's important for you to know, where you would feel most comfortable in the states. Whether you want to live in the north, south, northeast, etc. Also, university campuses can be located essentially in the middle of a cornfield in a very rural setting, or they can be located in a very populous center, like say in the center of New York City, for example. So there's something else to kind of keep in mind about where you would want to live in the States. The academic factor is very important in determining where you will end up studying in America, but also considering where you're most comfortable living will be a very important thing to also take into consideration. Also, for housing, will you be interested in living in dormitories on campus or off campus? Many universities at the undergraduate level will require students to live on campus at least for the first 2 years. And so if you're not interested in that, maybe you should look for schools that have more of a flexible policy about housing. Also, if you are interested in any kind of activities, so sports, dance, art clubs, special interest clubs, maybe you want to consider those in your choice for universities in the States as well. If you want a school that has, maybe say you're interested in music but don't play professionally, but you want to join some kind of orchestra, maybe you look for schools that have that kind of opportunity. Or same thing for sports. If you play tennis or some other sport, but not professionally, but you want to play just for fun, then maybe look for schools that have those facilities available to you as well. So basically, after you have considered all these different factors, you've examined your academic past, you have examined kind of your future goals and what you want out of your education, you've considered cost, places to live, things like that, you will then need to do more research on the universities and narrow your choices essentially. Realistically, you're not going to apply to 4,000 universities in the United States. Realistically, you might apply to maybe 10, but most students will apply to fewer than that. So it's important that the universities you select to apply for are the ones that are going to be the best fit for you, taking into consideration all of your needs. So a couple of more tips to help you when narrowing your choice. So after you have a list of, say, 15 to 20 schools that are generally that fit you academically, that fit you where you want to live in the United States, cost and things like that, then you really need to do even more research, more homework to figure out the specific schools that will be the ones that you will apply to. So the first step will be looking at the college university websites, looking at their requirements, their application requirements. When are their deadlines? How much are their fees for sending in applications? What type of tests do they require? And what type of test score range do they require? Things like that. You can also, from there, also look at different types of search engines. And if you go to the EducationUSA's website, you can see the address at the bottom of that slide. You will have access to different types of search engines that can help you narrow down your choice even more. Also, many campus universities offer, actually all of them essentially, will offer campus visits. So if you have the opportunity to go to the United States to visit the campus, this is also a great way to make the decision. But many universities now are offering virtual tours where you can go explore campus in a virtual format. And also see the amenities and see if it's a place that you would want to live and study. From there, if you can't go visit campuses and there's not a virtual option, if you are located in an area where education fairs are offered, so when U.S. university representatives are touring in your country, this is also a great way to ask questions and see if these universities will be a good fit for you. The people attending these education fairs are very interested in meeting international students. That's why they travel for these events, and are able to answer pretty much any question that you would have about applying to their school and the requirements of their school and things like that. So that's another great way to have access to the Higher Education USA education representatives, and another way of making choices for the future. And then two, also you have options of contacting an Education USA advisor in your community. If you physically cannot go to an Education USA advising center, all the advising centers can provide some sort of support to you online, so either through email or through Skype. And again, you can find the Education USA nearest to you through the Education USA website, and I'll show you a slide in 1 second. So from there, I just get the last slide. So from there, like I mentioned before, the information that I presented today is based on the 5 steps to U.S. study, and this is available for undergraduate, graduate, English language programs, and short-term programs. So I highly recommend you taking a look at this site and follow the guide. Each of the guides will have what's called a Define Your Priorities worksheet, which has very specific questions to help you narrow your choices to see what kind of preferences you have about studying at American University, and also kind of a way to help analyze your academic background. So I would highly recommend you to check out that resource as another tool for helping you to choose a U.S. institution. Another way you can find more information about U.S. student institutions is going to be on our social media pages with Education USA. These are the global pages that are listed on your screen now. But again, if you look for an Education USA in your community, they are likely to have their local social media sites where they post more specific information that will be geared towards you, the students in your country. And also, we'll be able to provide information about events for training, workshops, and things they might be able to offer to also help you with this decision. So, and the last slide that I want to show you is just, again, the EducationUSA website. And on this site, you will be able to basically find an advisor that's nearest you. Again, if you just go to the EducationUSA website, you can click on the link for international students, and there will be an option to find an advisor nearest you. And from here, you'll just click through the screens and find the contact information for an advising center in your community that will be able to help you either in person or online. So that's essentially all of the questions, all the slides that I have for today. What I can do now is go through and look at your questions. Let's see. Okay, so the first question, should scholarship opportunities be received before or after university enrollment? So for scholarship information, you need to, it's important that you look for these simultaneously when you look for universities while you'll study. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it's very important that you consider cost of your institution and the type of financial aid they provide if this is going to be an important deciding factor for you. Most universities, when they make their admissions decision, either at their undergraduate or graduate level, they will make them simultaneously. They will make the admittance letter to you saying, congratulations, you've been admitted, and then shortly after that also give you the financial aid offer or fellowship information about their school. So it's important that you look for these opportunities at the same time. So the next question, are U.S. colleges NEET blind with regards to admitting international students? Again, this is going to depend on the individual institution, so it's hard for me to give you a very clear answer on this. It just really depends on the institution. If the institution has a high priority of increasing their international students on campus, they might have specialized scholarships that are available for international students, and some of them might not. So again, it's just going to depend on the U.S. university where you're applying and finding out this information from them. Okay, so just looking through some more questions. Okay, so there's a question about applying for scholarship to study English in the United States. Again, the question here is really going to depend on the institution, and when selecting an institution, it's important to keep this in mind, whether they provide a scholarship or not to international students for studies. Sometimes the scholarships will be dependent on the type of field of study. So overall, technical type fields for at the graduate level will traditionally receive more financial support than humanities at the undergraduate level, for example, so keep that in mind, please. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to type them in the chat or in the question box. So here's a question. Graduated from the Faculty of Science from a university. Can a master's program be suitable for me? Whether or not you would pursue a master's degree or a different type of degree in the States at the graduate level will really depend on your future career goals and if it's a necessary step for you in furthering your career. And this will be a decision that you will need to make for yourself. But in the United States, just as there are undergraduate degrees, there are master's and PhD degrees in literally any subject that you'd want to study. And whether or not you pursue them will depend on how you will use that education in the future and whether or not it's necessary for you to further your career in that field. Okay, next question is, What can I do to study online at a U.S. university? The process for this is going to be very similar to the process of finding an institution for studying in person, to travel to America to study. Not every university will offer full degrees online, and not every university will offer all their degrees online. So again, you'll need to consider the type of education that you need for the future, how you'll pay for the program, whether or not they have financial aid for that type of degree, and whether or not that degree is even offered at the institution that you're interested in. So the process will be very similar to just choosing institution in general. Okay, so here's another question. The student is asking about which institution would be best for renewable energy and computer technology for graduate studies. Again, this is going to really depend on all the factors I mentioned before. I'll just skip to the slide again. So basically, it's going to depend on all these factors. It will depend on your background in the field. Do you do research in that field now? What were your grades at the undergraduate level in your university where you currently studied? Are you able to get financial aid from the universities? Are you looking to do research? Are you looking to teach? All these are going to be factors when selecting a university, so it's not something that I can just give you a list. It will really depend on you, your background, and your future goals. And then from there, the universities that are most appropriate for you will be based on those questions, those answers. Okay, it looks like I've answered all the questions, so if you have any more questions, please feel free to type them in the box. Okay, the next question is that about a student graduating from engineering school and is asking if there are any scholarship programs available for international students to pursue masters in finance. Yes, I know there are these kinds of programs, but again, it will really depend on your background and your ability to get these financial awards. But I do know that students have received these scholarships. I work mostly with students from Russia, and I do know that we've had Russian students receiving financial awards to pursue master's degrees in finance, but they are harder to get in general. Okay, next question is, how can I get financial aid for my education? Financial aid for education, I believe another advisor might have covered this question already earlier today, but I'll just briefly answer. So to get financial aid for education, like I mentioned, the first place to look is going to be at the universities in America. They will have the most type of financial aid for students, and they will be the biggest, I don't want to say donors, the biggest supporters of financial aid for international students. So this is why it's so important that you look for schools that both offer international students for financial aid, and that you are eligible to receive that financial aid based on previous experiences or future goals and things like that. The next question, is there a scholarship program for Moroccan students in the U.S.? I don't want to say yes or no just because I don't work directly with students from Morocco. Like I said, I work mostly with students from Russia. This would be a good question to ask an EducationUSA advisor in Morocco, and also look at the U.S. Embassy's website for your country. that would be the first place I would say to look for information for scholarships for Moroccan students. Okay, so we have a question that a student has a degree in a foreign language, and what do I need to do so that I qualify my studies in the U.S. through scholarship? If I understand the question correctly, this question is pertaining to how you would get your degree evaluated to be considered for admission and financial aid. How universities will evaluate your previous degrees will depend on each institution, essentially. Some U.S. universities are fine having official transcripts with translations of your grades sent to them as part of the admissions package. Sometimes they will require that you send your diploma or your grades to an evaluation system. So WES or ECA or something like that would be able to evaluate your transcripts and your grades that way. And that's how they would determine whether or not you have the academic background necessary to be admitted to their program and also available or eligible for financial aid. I think a lot of times it will depend on if you're pursuing a degree in that same field, if you're choosing to switch degrees, things like that, but you'll need to contact the university to see how they would want to receive your previous academic records. Okay, so this next question, again, the answer is going to depend, but I'll read the question anyway. I would like to know the eligibility criteria for a Master's of Science in Management Information Systems in the States. This is going to depend on the universities that you're looking to apply to. Overall, the general requirements for applying to graduate programs in the States are going to be to take the GRE, the exam, the GRE, and an English language proficiency exam, so either the IELTS or TOEFL exam. You will also be required to write essays. So usually it's going to be a general essay about why you want to study at that institution in particularly, or it can be something more focused on your previous academic background or intended research in the future. So those are going to be the general kind of requirements. You'll also need to get recommendation letters from current professors or teachers that work with you in this field. But then each school will have its own individual requirements. So this is why it's important for you to examine your academic past and kind of also analyze what you want to do in the future and go through all the factors that I mentioned about size, type of institution you want to be studying at, cost, things like that, and taking that into consideration. And then from there, research the universities and see what their eligibility requirements are for you based on your academic background and what you want to pursue in the future. Okay, so this next question says, I would like to know more information about funding. Funding, again, will be based on so many different factors. It's hard for me to give you a short answer to suffice the answer to that question. So the short answer I'll give you is to look at the EducationUSA website. There is a section for international students that has a list of scholarships that are offered by U.S. universities, so you can check that first. You can also contact the EducationUSA advisor in your community for information about funding. Also on the EducationUSA website, there are many different resources available to students, previous presentations that have been reported on all aspects of applying to U.S. institutions in the States. And funding is a very important topic for international students, so you'll be able to find many resources about funding on the EducationUSA website. So check there for more information on that. Okay, so there's a question, what do you know about work opportunities for F1 visa holders, and what are limits to the work? For F1 visa holders, students are allowed to work up to 20 hours, but it has to be on campus. So you have to work a job that's on campus someplace. And again, this is something that the International Student Office will be able to provide you more information about for your particular campus while you'll study in the States. So yes, 20 hours is definitely a limit, but as far as the type of work, it will have to be on campus, but I don't know, again, it'll depend on your university, the types of jobs they have available on that campus. Okay, so next question. Can you give advice for the best universities for a master's degree, specifically in IT, that give scholarship for women in developing countries like Afghanistan? This is a very interesting question. Unfortunately, I do not have a list for universities that have the master's degree. I do know many universities have master's degree programs in IT. And there are different types of scholarships and funds available to women, and sometimes women from developing countries, to pursue such degrees in the tech fields. But again, I don't have the information. I don't know the information off the top of my head. I do know they exist, and again, this will be something that you can do research on online on the EducationUSA website, or by contacting an EducationUSA advisor in your community for more details on that. So this next question, I don't know if I understand it very much, but if I am studying in my country, can I finish the career there? So I guess they're meaning in the United States. The goal for Education USA and for studying in the States, again, it depends on the student, but you know, the idea is for students to go back to their home countries to help work in their field and help you know, develop that particular field of study in their home countries. Again, it will depend on the student's individual preferences. But we do not advocate that students go to America to study and end up living and working there. We do looking mainly for just higher education, and so that's our role in helping students, is to pursue the higher education. And what they do after that will be up to them. Okay, this next question. Are there any free courses for international students in the United States? I'm not aware of any free courses that are for international students, because you would have to still get a visa to go to the States, and there'd have to be some reason for giving you the visa, and you'd still have to demonstrate financial ability to support yourself while in the States. So I'm not sure about that. There are lots of online courses that are available online for free. And the two platforms that are most popular right now are Coursera and edX. And on these two sites, there are lists and lists of different courses available from many universities around the world. Many of them are based in the United States, on topics from anything like artificial intelligence to psychology to a foreign language, things like that. And so that might be a good place to look for free online courses. But free courses in the United States, I am not sure about that. Okay, so this next question is about can you do work and study for a U.S. graduate program in the United States? For graduate programs, since I focus mainly on undergraduate, I'll just briefly talk about this for graduate students. The two most common types of financial aid or kind of financial support you'll get at the graduate level will be in the form of either a research assistantship or teaching assistantship. And this is where you would have your courses that you take as a student, but then you porter part of your expenses will be covered by doing work with a professor. So you would either teach courses or you would do research with the professor. And again, this would be dependent on whether you have a strong research background and you're interested in going to research, or you have a teaching background and are going to be a professor, things like that. So those are two most common ways for graduate students to be admitted to universities, to get financial aid from universities. Okay, so next question is, student mentions that they have a bachelor's degree in IT, and there's no work experience, and there's low academic profile. What can they do to, how will that affect their admissions process at University of the United States? This could be, many factors could be, come into play here. So first off, not all universities require students to have work experience at the graduate level. Many will, but not all of them will require this. Also, if a student has low academic records from the past, there are different ways you can help kind of fix the problem. First would be the standardized exams that you would need to take. So for the graduate level, you would have to take the GRE and an English language proficiency exam. If you are able to do really well on those exams, that might be one way to demonstrate to the admissions commissions at these universities that you are a viable candidate for admission. Also, if there is a very significant reason why a student would have low academic scores, maybe there's a family tragedy, maybe there are health problems, other things could have affected why they have a very low score. And if a student is able to communicate those reasons effectively to the university, then this might also help to explain that score and also give the university reason to admit the student, even though their scores are kind of low. Okay, so the next question, is there any way for international students to get in-state tuition? Yes and no. So for the most part, international students will be charged out-of-state tuition, the same tuition that a student from a different state would pay to go to that same institution. But there are schools that are able to provide in-state tuition for international students. Again, this will depend on the schools themselves, and if the student is a really strong student, they want to admit the student, sometimes they can make these exceptions for the student to get this in-state tuition. Sometimes they'll offer it as part of the financial aid package, saying that the student will have in-state tuition fees, but then maybe get a slightly higher scholarship on top of that. I do know students have received these in the past, especially because I work with Russian students. I know of Russian students who have received in-state tuition as public institutions. It's just not as common. So keep this in mind when you're looking for schools, and make sure you ask the university representatives this question if it's a possibility. Some schools just can't do that. Some will have the flexibility to offer it. Okay, next question is, how should students prepare for undergraduate studies if the students are going to complete high school this June 2012, or 14, sorry. Well, basically the same procedure that I outlined right now. If the student is looking to start university in, say, August or September 2014 and has not started the process, chances are it will be too late this year. So the student would need to start working for applying next fall. So apply 2014 for admission in 2015. A student will need to, again, examine their background, examine their goals for the future, consider where they want to study in states, consider whether they have the financial means to pay for education, or if they're able to get financial aid from the university or different sources. And prepare for the exams. So SAT and ACT are the most common two exams that are required at the undergraduate level, and then the TOEFL or the IELTS as well will be required for students. So even for students who are just now starting the process to apply this fall for next year's admission, they'll need to do a lot of work. It's a long-term process, and we suggest students start the process anywhere from 2 years to 18 months in advance of when they plan to be in the States studying. But that doesn't mean they don't have time. They'll just need to really speed up the process. Okay, next question. Is it possible to get funding for a PhD for renewable energy having a Master's of Science from my local institution? Yes. I do know that this is it's possible to get funding for any field in PhD programs. It will depend on the universities. Some universities will have, like I said, a priority to admit international students. Maybe they have priority fields on their campus they want to fill, and there are not enough Americans filling space. They'll have an even stronger push to get international students to fill those positions. And some schools will have a program, but for whatever reason they don't have funding, and so they won't admit students a certain year. I've heard of certain universities that were not able to admit international students for a certain year because they didn't have funding for that student. And so they asked the student to wait and come the following year when they would have funding again. So I know that it's possible to get funding. I just can't tell you exactly which institution or how much money they can give. Again, it will depend on you, your background, and availability at that university. Okay, so some of the questions on here are about specific majors, and so I can't go through and tell you the universities that offer all the programs that you're asking about. So basically, what I would suggest is to go to the EducationUSA website, look for the resources for international students. There will be search engines that can help you identify schools that have your program. The two most common search engines, and again, there will be links on the EducationUSA website, are for undergraduate College Board and for graduate Peterson's. And these search engines allow you to search for institutions based on the criteria you enter. So you can put in a certain major, you can put in a university size, tuition cost range, things like that. So that would be the best way to find out which programs have the best, or which universities have the best programs for your needs. This next question, do all universities in the United States require a GRE when you apply? No, they don't. Most will, but again, it will depend on your program. I do know of some universities that the graduate school that admits you to the program does not require a GRE, but maybe your specific department where you will study will require the GRE. So that sometimes will be an issue. Sometimes they will require it for international students, just to kind of see, where you would fit in overall. But it's not required by every university. You'll just need to search which schools don't require the GRE. Okay, this next question, which I think might be the last question I'll have time to answer. After graduation, can I find a job in the United States, or will I be forced to come back to my home country? After you finish a degree in the United States, so whether it's going to be an associate's degree, 2-year degree, a bachelor's degree, 4-year degree, or a master's degree, or a PhD degree, every international student has the opportunity to do what's called optional practical training, which is a short period of time when you're allowed to work in the United States in your field of study. Some fields of study have a slightly longer period where you're allowed to work in the country than others, but this will be something that the International Student Services office on your campus in the United States will be able to answer you very, very clearly about the requirements and how you go about getting the program and things like that. But that is the opportunity. Beyond that, it's up to the employer if they want to hire you full-time and do the visa process for you, and the student's other situation. But for the most part, the F1 visa is a student visa, and if you're not a student, then you won't be able to have legal status to stay in the States as a student of that visa. So I think I have time for maybe one more question. I've mentioned several times about the EducationUSA website. On this slide that you see on your screen, at the bottom of the slide, it says educationusa.state.gov. That is the website that you would go to for EducationUSA resources, links for scholarships, search engine, things like that. Okay, so this last question I'll answer is, again, related to financial questions. Student who has been admitted to university is looking for financial assistance, is asking about whether it's feasible for international students to get loans. Some countries are now offering loans for their students, education loans for their students to use at an international institution. So that would be one way to look into getting a loan. The home institution where you'll be studying in the States might also be able to offer loans to students, international students. It's not as common, and there are stipulations they have. Again, it'll depend on the institution itself, so I really don't know exactly what to tell you on that. But getting a loan in general, most American students get student loans, and it's considered to be normal practice. But then whether or not you get a loan will depend on you and your background, and things like that. So I can't say that you should definitely get one or not get one, but you'll just need to look. They're not offered, in the United States, they're not offered as commonly to international students as they are to American students. So thank you all for your participation and questions today. So, like I mentioned, if you have any further questions about applying to United States, University of the United States, college, undergrad or graduate, finding financial aid, choosing institution, things like that, definitely look at the EducationUSA website that I have referenced several times. And from there, you'll be able to find resources that can help you with self-study, self-preparation, and also links for contacting an EducationUSA advisor who can work directly with you. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to contact an advisor, and good luck with your applications to U.S. universities.